am Dr. Juliann Young. As the group said, I was in the college classroom as an instructor for 20 years before I made this shift to corporate L&D. I love working in corporate L&D. There's lots of things that are transferable, but some things get left behind. And I think the universal design for learning is something that as corporate L&Ds or anybody who designs learning, we need to be more aware of. And a lot of times when I talk to people about using universal design for learning, they become very overwhelmed on how to approach that process and where do they begin. With AI, it's becoming even more scalable for us. So today I'm going to share with you different approaches, how you can use AI to help your universal design for learning. We're going to explore different tools. And I'll be focusing on the practical applications of the framework. But feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. And I'll have my chat open too. I'll try to be able to be like multi-purpose here. All right, so today we're going to start with an overview of the universal design for learning fundamentals for those who need a refresher. We'll then explore the current state of AI and the accessibility landscape. And then we're going to focus on the practical applications of AI in UDL and learning materials. And then finally, we're going to finish up. We have 2 case studies and with plenty of time for discussion. Again, I want this to be interactive, so please share your experiences in the chat. I will, hopefully we can converse along as we go through. All right, so Dhruv, do you have this as a poll?
Yes, I do.
Okay, do you want to launch that poll instead of this?
Just a second. I will launch the poll. It's launched.
Okay. So yeah, so let's look at how familiar are you with universal design for learning? And do you consider universal design for learning in your design process? I think a lot of people think about accessibility, but that's not necessarily the same thing as UDL. Do you end the poll, Dhruv, or me? I don't think I can.
Waiting to see everybody do it. I'll end it now.
Yeah, we can go on. Go ahead.
Done.
All right, so we have a wide range. But in general, people at least have heard about it or are familiar with it. I've worked on it extensively. I'm sure that's Rebecca in there. And then some of us consider it in our design process, but some of it don't. And that's really what I have found in the corporate space, is that sometimes people consider it and sometimes people don't. I think a lot of that has to depend on your training and where you originally learned instructional design. All right, so what is universal design for learning? It's an educational framework, and the main goal is to design and deliver learning experiences that are accessible to all learners. So it was inspired by universal design and architecture. So like curb cuts that help everyone. So not just people with specific disabilities. UDL is not about accommodating specific disabilities and accommodating or designing for people with specific disabilities. It's about designing for variability in learners from the very start. So the framework is actually based on neuroscience. I have a PhD in psychology, so that makes me very happy. And so it's based on neuroscience research and how people learn. And so the unique strengths, needs, interests, anything that they bring to the table, the framework should help be responsive to that. It removes barriers to learning and provides flexibility, maintains high learning expectations. So UDL really is a proactive approach to design rather than reactive, and it benefits all learners, not just those with disabilities. That's something I'll probably say multiple times as I go through this presentation today. So in the chat, can you let me know in your corporate space or wherever you're working today, are there challenges that you think you face with accessibility, or are there ways that you think that you should be expanding how you present your information? I know for me, the contract I just left, they were really text heavy. They just loved to have everything in a reading format. They wanted everybody to come in, read the information, and learn it. And that was a hard stop for me. I really wanted to integrate more audio and video. So what do you guys see where you are? Yeah, interactive content is big. And that's Laura, that's huge, right? So we create lots of things that can't be read by a screen reader. I have so many tables and so many charts and graphs, text heavy, absolutely. Less hate text. That's a big one. And for me, I always try to explain it as, well, what if you have someone who has a 1-hour commute on the way home and they want to consume this learning while they're driving, right? They can't read, they need to be able to listen, right? And so I always approach it that way. That seemed to get people to understand the importance of UDL. Yeah, that's great. Training on the factory floor is tough for auditory learners. Closed caption, that's huge. You'd be surprised how many times people don't think closed caption is important because, well, I'll give them a transcript. And I'm like, but that's not exactly the same. So it's really important when you start thinking about where all of our learners are coming from, their personal experiences and where we're asking them to learn from. All right, so there's 3 core principles or pillars of universal design for learning. Okay, so the first one is multiple means of engagement. This is the why of learning. The multiple means of representation, that's the what of
Julian,
learning.
do you want to
Yes.
present the presentation? Is that something that we're going to
Oh,
do? Yeah.
yeah, that'd be great if you guys aren't. Tell me if you're seeing it now.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it now? Can you see it, DeBru?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, great. All right. I'm going to go back for 1 second because there is a QR code on this one. If you want to read an article on how to revolutionize corporate training using universal design for learning, I thought it was a really, really good article. But you'll also get the presentation, so you can do that later. All right, so there's these 3 principles. Multiple means of engagement, that's the why of learning. Multiple means of representation, that's the what of learning. And then the multiple means of action and expression, that's the how of learning. All right, so these 3 principles map to different areas, networks in the brain, so are the affective region, recognition, and our strategic networks. So let's start with the multiple means of engagement, the why of learning. This addresses like people's motivation. Why are they coming to do this? What's their purpose? How are we going to sustain their interest throughout the learning? This maps to the affective nature that evaluates the importance of the assigned and assigns emotional significance. Like, so why am I doing this? Why do I have to keep doing it? How am I going to stay here? So this recognizes that learners differ significantly in what engages them and maintains their attention. Some learners are motivated by novelty. They want something different on every single page, while others really like predictability and routine. They want every page to look very similar and know exactly what's coming. Some prefer to work individually. Some prefer to work collaboratively. So that when we address multiple means of engagement, that's what we need to address. In terms of multiple means of representation, this maps to the brain's recognition network. And this is where we identify and categorize what we see, what we hear, what we read. It does acknowledge that people perceive and comprehend information differently based on their own sensory experiences, based on background knowledge, based on language and their cognitive strengths. So sometimes on cultural differences, we may have someone understanding something differently. Based on the sensory experiences people have had, they may be understanding something differently. So some learners grasp information quickly through text, others through visual or audio format. That might be our friend Les. So cultural and linguistic diversity influences how that information is going to be processed. Also, in this instance, we can talk about disability. So certain disabilities like dyslexia or dysgraphia may affect how we process that certain format, those certain forms of information. Okay, last one, multiple means of action and expression. This is the how we learn. This maps to the strategic networks in our brain that organize and orchestrate our thoughts and actions. And this recognizes that people navigate learning environments and express knowledge in different ways. Not everybody likes to write out their answers or answer a multiple choice question and say, yes, I've learned this, or here's the answer. So making someone respond the way you think they should respond, so either physically, cognitively, or using certain language, can mask someone's true understanding if you limit it to that one format. So some learners articulate ideas best through writing, others through speaking, and others through creating. So it's easy to see why UDL is imperative in the education sector, but sometimes, like we said, this is hard to translate over into my L&D colleagues. But let's look at some of these statistics. So by 2030, that's only 5 years, 30% of the workforce will likely belong to Gen Z. And 70% of Gen Zs use subtitles. That's not because they can't hear. It's not because of a hearing impairment. It's because they like the dual modality of hearing and reading at the same time. Also, some research suggests it helps them to focus more on the task at hand. And then for others, it's because they don't learn well with the incoming noise. Okay, so they like to be able to just read and see what's on the screen. So visualize what's on the screen while reading without having the hearing input. So that is sort of encapsulates what we're looking at here in UDL. 60% of Gen Z students rely on interactivity, immersive education, and problem-based learning. They may struggle with face-to-face communication, but excel in digital communication. And Gen Z is comfortable with digital tools and expects those personalized learning experience. They're coming from a place where this is the norm, right? So if you bring them into a work function and you say, okay, you're going to read through these PowerPoints, then answer these 15 questions, the learning is going to be very, very low. All right. So we're going to go through each principle, each UDL principle, and walk through how we can use AI to flesh that out. So the first one we're going to look at is multiple means of engagement. So this is the why part. This is the emotional part of learning. So the first one is we can personalize content with AI, such as learner-specific scenarios. We can adapt difficulty levels based on learner progression. So, if they're getting things right, we can go a little bit faster. If they're struggling, we can slow things down. We can give customized feedback based on their interactions. So imagine like a sales representative that receives examples based on their specific industry, or like a manager who's really struggling with conflict resolution, where they get lots of examples on conflict resolution in those scenarios. So each learner then receives feedback that aligns with their career goals and learning preferences. So we can create an emotional engagement through natural sounding voice narration, makes digital learning feel more conversational. AI coaching assistants or bots, which are everywhere now, they provide encouragement based on employees' specific challenges. Lots of times employees can just go into these bots, ask questions, and get this real-time feedback, real-time engagement monitoring that tells people, hey, maybe you should take a break, or maybe we should try this content over here. And even, of course, gamified elements, which people like, they like to get their little stickers. And then lastly, we can reduce barriers by transforming technical documentation into clear, accessible training for various roles. So provide just-in-time performance when employees need it. So training someone on something they have to use 2 months from now, that's not very helpful. But providing just-in-time training right now when they need it, that's excellent. So especially when they're encountering a challenge in a workflow, we can create multiple pathways for them to be able to learn things. And this can all be individualized based on their job function, and then also how long or their experience level they've been. So when we move away from, when we move into multiple means of representation, we're first going to focus on text adaptation and how this can transform our learning. In corporate L&D, we often face a challenge where our content needs to be accessible to employees with diverse backgrounds, diverse languages, cultures, proficiencies, lots of different subject matter experts, technical documentation, compliance materials, safety materials, and professional development resources that are too complex can create barriers to learning. So we can adjust reading levels automatically using AI now. Before, someone would have had to go in there, understand it, adjust that level, and that would have taken a lot of manpower. Now AI can do that. It has tremendous implications for global teams with different languages, with different proficiencies, cross-functional teams. We're training different topics, onboarding programs. I'm going to show you how easy this is. So I have a favorite LLM. If you've ever been to one of my webinars, you will know that Claude is my favorite LLM. And so you can see here, I have a, I have a prompt where I'm asking it, I have a part of this book chapter that I need to basically make it for non-finance people. This is all about defining derivatives. I have no idea what any of this means. I am not a finance person. And so I've created this prompt to say, this needs to be used in onboarding for non-finance individuals. Please explain it, use examples for instructional designers. And so I put this prompt into Claude, who's my favorite, and I asked him to do this for me because frankly, I don't have time to go out and find a SME who can understand all this, explain it to me, and then have me rewrite it. In a matter of seconds, Claude's coming here and he's like, hey, here you go. Here's how you're gonna understand derivative securities. What are the derivatives, different types of derivatives. And he really has made it to where when I read this, I'm like, oh, okay, I actually understand that. But I can even go a little bit further and to ask Claude and say, look, I don't even know what a commodity is. So maybe you should explain to me really simple terms like commodity. And then he will come back and he's going to, I also asked him to explain things like exchange rate. Perhaps we have people who haven't experienced that yet. So we can ask him to go back in and alter it based on what we think our audience might need. We can get as deep as we want to or as not. And so he's going to come back and be like, yeah, you're right. Let's define some of these. And if I don't like the examples, I can go back in and say, I need a better example and use this industry instead. So it really gives us a lot of flexibility to take exceptionally complex information and bring it to the level that we need. And of course, we can always ask our large language model, anything else I should know? If anybody's not done this, this is awesome, usually because there's always things it knows that I don't know. And so it'll also here spit out some things that maybe we should think about. And then we can add that in or choose not to add that in. All right, so we can also have, so that was our adjustment of the reading level. Now we can have simplified explanations. Beyond adjusting reading levels, we can generate alternative explanations of complex concepts. So maybe using different analogies, maybe tailoring it to different professional backgrounds, maybe different visual representations, anything that makes it more relevant, maybe make it more sense, have it make more sense culturally, have step-by-step breakdowns of the complicated process. We can also have contextual vocabulary support. So things like hover over definitions, that's awesome for people who might be struggling with the text, embedded explanations and acronyms, and even smart glossaries that adapt to the user's role and prior experience. So instead of everybody getting the exact same definition, they're going to adapt those definitions based on your experiences and perhaps give slightly different explanations so that you can understand things better. That'd have been awesome when I was taking calculus. That'd have been fantastic. So now let's look at the multiple means of representation with AI. And we're going to focus on transformation. Okay, so multimodal transformation. This approach fundamentally changes how we can present information to meet diverse learning preferences across our organization. So today's in corporate environment, we are under a lot of pressure to deliver learning experience that are efficient and effective. We want our learners to come in, we want our learners to learn effectively, and then get back out. and go do what they're supposed to do. And research consistently shows us that information presented in multiple formats significantly improves comprehension, retention, and application of the material. So with AI, we can now do that into various modalities at scale. It's not like we have to go through and do it word by word or topic by topic. So we can convert text to audio to visual representations. We can automatically transform text-based materials into learning. Things like natural sounding audio narrations with appropriate pacing and emphasis, dynamic video presentations with synchronized video visuals, infographics, visual summaries. What's particularly powerful, and this is what I love, is that employees can choose their preferred format. So some people may want to listen to the audio versions during their commute, while others might want to read during their focus time. And so this flexibility accommodates the diverse preferences and circumstances. So I'm going to show you how we do this with Murf. Let me see. Oh, no. Hold on. There is... Give me 1 second, guys. There is... Give me 1 second. I want to get the video playing. Okay, so in Murf, what we can do is we take the language that we want, and we can bring it in and paste it in the appropriate spot. We can choose whoever we want to translate the information into audio, I guess is the best way to say that. And so we can ask them to translate, to create from this audio into this text, from the text into the audio. We're going to download that, and then we're going to be able to bring it right into our learning. So it transforms our learning like this. Let's say this is your learning, okay? And you come in and this is what you're supposed to be learning. And you're supposed to go through it and you're supposed to read all of this stuff. And you're supposed to keep reading and reading and reading, but you're not a reader. And so you have a problem because there's just a lot. Instead, now we've given you an audio script. So Murf has created for us this audio script we've uploaded.
Congratulations. You've been promoted to a manager role. You're first. You may feel excited, nervous, or even a little bit overwhelmed.
So if you're not interested in reading, or perhaps perhaps you're driving along, you can now listen to it. Now, what if perhaps you come from a place where the dialect is a bit different? This audio translation has a UK dialect, which I think is super fun.
Congratulations. Now what? Congratulations. You've been promoted to a manager role. You're first. You may feel excited, nervous, or even a little bit over.
So if you are struggling with the dialect of where you're working or the dialect of what you're trying to watch, this would be an awesome way for you to be able to help your employees out. All right, so I actually can't see the chat. Debroof, are there any questions I need to be addressing or anything we need to talk, I need to look at?
A specific question that I think was there from Jesse Patterson was, how do you quality check with the AI, with what the AI produces? That's the only question that I see.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Okay, so first of all, you never should create something without a SME. You're still going to need SMEs. You're still going to need subject matter experts. So let's say I have this, we'll use that finance document. Let's say, okay, we need to onboard a whole bunch of designers so they understand the basics of finance. And so I go in and I create this training, and I use generative AI to adjust the learning level. I would then, before I publish that, I would take that to a subject matter expert and say, is this correct? ask for the human component of it, because sometimes generative AI is going to explain things a little bit rocky. It's not going to be the way it really should be explained. And so then we get that human component, we get that human touch. In addition, I regularly ask different large language models to check each other. So I'll get a copy from from Claude, and then I will go over to Gemini and say, I just asked Claude to do this. Is Claude correct? And sometimes they'll say, no, he missed this, or yes, but I would add this on. And you can cross-check them with each other. You also should always ask your large language model, did you hallucinate any of those facts? Because of course, large language models can make up whatever they want to because they're predicting text. So if someone's predicted wrong text a lot, you'll get hallucinations. So I would say at the end, I now rewrite this only with information that you are 100% sure is verifiable. And then it's going to break it down even more. There are also different types of large language models that are bound more by scientific research, or ones that will only tell you something if it can be cited different places. So you can play around with what different models you like and where you would approach it to make sure you're getting good quality information. All right, so let's look at the differentiated response formats. So when we want learners to demonstrate learning in ways that work for them, this approach fundamentally shifts how employees demonstrate that competency. So in traditional corporate training, we often just limit ourselves to standardized assessments. So multiple choice quizzes, written responses, role playing that's being observed by somebody else. But our workforce brings a lot of diverse strengths, communication, abilities, ways of demonstrating knowledge. So by expanding our response formats, we can gain more accurate insights into really what people know while creating those engaging learning experiences. So if we allow employees to demonstrate their knowledge their way, perhaps a written response. It's traditional, but with AI enhanced evaluation for consistency, maybe we're going to have them do audio and video recordings. So employees can record demonstrations now, visual presentations, perhaps they have them create infographics, diagrams, or other visuals, simulation-based demonstrations or interactive-based demonstrations that show a process of decision-making or procedural things, technical implementations. So there's lots of different ways that we can now display knowledge, and AI can help us generate the ideas of how someone can display this knowledge. And then also AI as a creation support tool. So beyond offering how they can do it, it also serves as the support system for actually creating the knowledge demonstration. So it'll help employees outline and structure responses. It'll scaffold the thinking process. It'll provide feedback. It'll also help them convert between different formats. So tools that transform, just like Murf, will transform ideas from written text into audio. It'll also help them improve ideas for clarity, because sometimes if they're designing or showing knowledge in a way they're not used to, it might look clear to them, but not to other people. So they can use it as a feedback tool. So there's lots of different ways when we're talking about differentiated response formats that people can be aided with generative AI without having generative AI give them the answer. All right, so where are we in terms of AI and the accessibility landscape? Okay, so this seems to be, it boils down to these 5 big areas. So text to speech and speech to text. So these, speech to text has been around a lot longer, but text to speech, and our friends here at Murf do that superbly. This is where we're seeing this most. Okay, then we're also seeing language translation. Again, our friends here at Murf help us with that. Image recognition, that's another really strong area. Content simplification, which I just showed you using Claude, but there are a lot of actual applications or websites that are made to do that. And then also differentiated or personalized learning. You can do that through a large language model, but again, there are apps and websites and platforms that are designed to actually create personalized learning. So most platforms, Microsoft, Google, Apple, have a lot of these integrated already. but there's also lots of open source options, and they're really coming on very rapidly. Okay, so what do we do? This is a lot of information, and it can get really overwhelming when you start thinking about, okay, now I have to go back and I now have to create a training on safety for all of the people in my company. Okay. Well, the traditional approach was to create content, then make it accessible through some sort of retrofit. But the new approach is to create content using design thinking. Start with AI assistance from the beginning. So shifting from retrofit to design thinking. We want to generate accessible alternatives automatically. Okay, so do that from the very beginning. Don't later on think, oh, golly, maybe we should be doing this a different way. So we can do that by embedding accessibility checks into creation workflows. So when you are designing, do you have a spot in your design document that says, stop? Did you run a UDL check? There's lots of different ways you can do that. You can do that simply through a large language model. But again, there are lots of apps, platforms, websites that will help you do that also. You can also use AI as an accessibility consultant. I regularly will say, hey, I can't think of any other, I have this project I need them to work on, and I can't think of any other way for them to do this other than write out a project plan. What other ideas do you have, right? So we can ask it use AI as an accessibility consultant. Also, we can use it for an accessibility checker. Most large language models and other platforms like that, you now can upload your PowerPoints, your videos, your whatever you want. And it's going to tell you you're missing alt text. You've got poor color contrast. This is not a good font. You've got a table and the screen reader is not going to read that. And it can scan those materials for you real time. There's also ones that kind of like Grammarly that will scan materials and tell you right away if it's going to be accessible or not. It'll flag you right away so you know if you're going in the right direction. So this proactive approach actually saves time later and creates better overall learning experiences. All right, so if you came to my last webinar, you know how important effective prompting can be when working with generative AI. So the quality of what you get out of any generative AI, any sort of AI, is deeply dependent on what you give it, what you put into it. So these are some prompts that I use regularly, and I suggest you guys could use these too. You need to be specific both about the accessibility standards and the particular needs. So something like create content that meets WCAG 2.1 AA standards. That is very specific. Okay, they know that, they know. So if you remember when I was going back and I was asking it to take that finance and bring it to a level where instructional designers would understand it, I actually said, this came from our finance professionals. It needs to go to people who don't work in finance. They're instructional designers. You can say, design with color blindness considerations, right? And so I can say, I don't know if I did that right. Is there enough contrast here? Instructional designers, we love to make things look pretty and we love to make colors and all these things, but sometimes that's just not going to work because we don't have the right color blindness considerations or even just considerations for our readers. We can think about what types of language we want to use or optimize for attention difficulties. This is a huge one. Our attention spans have gone from something like 32 seconds to 8 seconds. And so we can hold someone's attention for 8 seconds on a page. And so we need to optimize how much we put on that page, right? So you don't want to have a lot of fluff on the outside of your page because you're going to lose them in that outside border. All right, so we can request multiple formats simultaneously, generate both text and audio versions, or create visual and descriptive text. And so we can do that in the beginning so we don't have to go back and do that later. Okay, so here we go. Let's try this. We have 2 case studies to work through. So this case study, this is our challenge. And I'm going to turn off my screen sharing so I can actually see the chat. So here's our challenge. We have a diverse, multinational global workforce with varying backgrounds, technical abilities, and learning preferences. Information overload. There's information overload during traditional onboarding. There's a ton of information and people get overwhelmed. So this one-size-fit-all training has led to significant gaps in the knowledge of the employees. They're seeing this now as the employees who are going through onboarding have been staying for a little while. There's accessibility barriers in the traditional way, and there's time constraints for new hires and learning and development teams. We just don't have enough time for the new hires to meet one-on-one for onboarding training. So let's think for a minute. I'm going to stop my screen share so I can see the chat. So tell me what you think. What might you approach? How might you approach this? What are some, this is our challenge for onboarding. What are some solutions you can see? What might you do? Yeah, so stagger the training. So just in time is first. That's great. So what do they really need up front? So they need to make sure they can log onto their systems, that they can access their email. So I love that. Chunking and microlearning, add things on later. I love the creating of personas. Probably because I'm a storyteller at heart. So create a persona, have that person walk with that with their persona through onboarding or through their time at the company. Yeah, development checks, testing functionality. Smaller sessions would be great, but sometimes that actually just makes more time constraints for the L&D people. So if we are able to use AI to make it so, okay, the people who are coming in are going to work in this department, their onboarding needs to look like this, and someone who's going to work in this department over here, their onboarding needs to look a little bit different. So those short learning bites, a thorough needs analysis and short learning bites is really true. I recently, in my last contract, the edict went out. Everybody's going to be trained in generative AI. That was everybody's doing it. That was it. And so the L&D team was charged with making sure that every person in the company had a training done for generative AI. It was going really well until we hit the engineering department. For some reason, we just couldn't get those darn engineers to take a generative AI course. They don't need to take a generative AI course. They're building the generative AI stuff for that company, right? And so it was really challenging because we had the edict that we needed to hit 100% of people had taken, right, Rebecca, that's exactly right. So 100% of people had taken a course in generative AI. So what we did was me and my team ended up saying, okay, what would be interesting for engineers? And we basically brought together different sources of information where they could go and they would go in, they could read these articles, they could explore a podcast, or they could have a discussion with other people. And so all of these things were possible for them so they could actually get their credit for having their generative AI training. So knowing your audience was really, really, really important at that moment. Oh, okay. So Melody, this is great. So complicated by shifts, we only have them on day shift for onboarding. So if we don't keep them in traditional onboarding, they will go to nights where we don't have the trainer availability. And video or e-learning style of training doesn't work for all when we have new hires with little to no experience with technology. So you do your onboarding during the day, and then they get shifted into night and they don't have that support. That's where I would say maybe we need a bot. Maybe you guys need some sort of bot. They're actually really not hard to create anymore. I think a college student could probably create them, not me, but somebody else. And that could answer some of these questions for them that might be helpful. And that just-in-time training, I'm having trouble with this piece of technology. That bot might be able to point them to the right pieces of information. All right, so I'll show you what I came up with, my expansive list. So AI solutions, things like converting text-heavy manuals to engaging audio experiences, creating multilingual voiceovers for global teams, developing accessible audio versions of all training materials, generating consistent professional narration across all modules, combining with visual elements. Look, all of these challenges could have been met without AI. you don't need AI to do it, but the road would have been very, very long and extra challenging. And with AI, we're able to reach all the learners in a fraction of the time. So the challenge, so this really resonates with most learning and development professionals when we need to develop training that isn't one size fits all. So this is really a great place where I like to talk about Murf's dubbing option. Since the last video didn't really play that well, I'm going to go and pull down. So remember this course we had people taking, this course right here, right? So they're coming, they're going through the course and they're reading along, and then they get to this video.
Welcome to Managing at Our Company. This comprehensive program is designed.
They're going to be introduced to it. They're going to have to understand it, but perhaps this person is not a native English language speaker. So then what do we do? Okay, well, in steps Murf, our friends from Murf. Nope, that's the audio. Here we go. So with
From the
Murf
homepage,
we
we
go.
will click Create Project and give your project a name. On the bottom left, click on Murf Suite and a new window will open and you'll choose Murf Dub. Again, click Create Project and give your project a name. Click Next. Choose the files you want dubbed. These can be audio files or, as we are showing, video files. For today, we will use automated dubbing, but you do have the option to choose Quality Assurance Review. Click Next. Now you choose your languages. The input language is English and the output language will be German. Click Next. Murf will then show you how many files will be created in the language you chose. Click Start Dubbing. It will only take a few minutes depending on the size of the files. Once your file is processed, you can preview the file. You can also make edits to the dub if you would like. Your file is now ready for download. You can choose to download your file as audio or video, and in this case, we are downloading a full video.
Okay, so what does that do for our friends that in their training, right? So here we have Managing Our Company, and they come along and they say, oh, I can actually listen to this exact same video in German.
Willkommen zum Management in unserem Unternehmen. Dieses umfassende Programm ist darauf ausgelegt, unsere Manager in außergewöhnliche Führungskräfte zu verwandeln.
So could I have done that as a learning and development specialist without generative AI? Without Murf? Sure, I could have taken that video. I could have taken it to a native German speaker, said, could you translate this and then do the voiceover for it? That would have taken a really long time. However, with Murf, I can just upload it, have it translated through the dub, and bring it right into my L&D. This literally took me less than 10 minutes. I really should ask my brother-in-law, who's German, how long it would have taken him to actually translate that for me and voice over it for me. That would have been interesting to know. We have another example here.
In 1890, Alexandre
We don't, because they're both going to play at the same time. Sorry about that. Oh, I can do it this way.
In 1898, Alexandre Louis Caillet stumbled on the perfect ingredients to create his chocolate. Lush green meadows, grazing cows.
But what if we need that in French? Here's a really great example of what it's going to look like.
En 1898, Alexandre Louis Caillet a découvert les ingrédients parfaits pour créer son chocolat.
Again, that
Des
took
prairies
us-
verdoyantes, des vaches en pâturage.
Do you feel like you're answering the same questions
I
over
don't.
and over again
Sorry.
about a specific topic or a specific project? Wouldn't you just love to have a TA to be able to help answer those questions? Check out what Study Fetch has for you.
Guys, I can't make anything stop on my computer right now. All right, and I've somehow lost my screen. Here we go.
Julian, Tal Holmes has been raising their hand for a bit. Maybe you can take their question.
Here. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
I have allowed them to talk.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the German, I agree, still should be checked by a SME. It's still gonna, I still think it would be a lot faster. Tal, do you want to put something in the chat, or do you want to, can you come off mute? Did you say he can or cannot come off mute?
Yes, yes, they can.
Okay. So Tal, do you want to come off mute?
Okay. I don't see them. All right, I think we can continue. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so let's look at, hold on, I want to look at this. Can it be any voice in the original video, or does it need to be a Murf voice? The original video was not a Murf voice. I don't remember where we got that original voice. I don't recall. But it does not need to be Murf. It will dub anything. In fact, I've dubbed things that I use from YouTube or anything. And you can integrate Murf with Rise. That is way too big to do for this. Perhaps someday I'll have an office hour and we can sit down and we can talk about how you can integrate Murf with Rise, or how Canva, it goes right beautifully into Canva. So yeah, Murf also offers that quality assurance, so we can make sure that that dub is correct with the German if we need to. Okay. All right, so let's look at case study number 2. Let me see what you guys have here. So here's our challenge. All right, technical content, and it varies widely in complexity and specialization. Mixed audience, though. We have novices, we have intermediates, and subject matter experts. We have high stakes learning with safety and compliance implications, rapidly evolving procedures requiring frequent training updates, technical staff with different learning preferences and abilities, and then global workforce. So let me ask this question. How do you currently balance the needs of novices and experts in the same training environment? So if you had this challenge, this technical training, and you had to balance the needs of novices and experts, how would you go about that now? You were going to have novices, intermediates, and subject matter experts all in one training. Scenario-based training, that would be good. Yeah, Patricia, I think a lot of times we do that, right? So we test and see, where are you? Okay, if you fall in this, you're going to go over to this training. If you fall here, you're going to go into this training. It does take
Then
some
I
time.
think we have to present again. Yeah, stop presenting.
Yeah. Tell me if you guys can see it. Is it coming up? Is it come up this time?
Yep.
Okay. So I just can't see the chat when it's up. So you guys will have to kind of go through that.
No problem.
Okay. So we have to think about, how might we approach these issues, right? How might we might test people, put them in the right spots. But there's also some AI resources we can use, right? We can transform that complex information into audio tutorials. So for those who need it, they can listen. We can do voice instruction across the different modules, audio guides, multilingual technicians. What I don't have here is adaptive and reactive training. So if someone's struggling in one area, it will come back, it will know that, and it will adjust training as it goes along. So, oh, they haven't gotten these 3 questions right about this level, so I better go in and ask them, teach them a little bit more about this technical level. So again, these could have been met without AI, but it would have just been a lot longer. So here, employees can engage through documentation, visuals, video, hands-on simulations. again, we do need to have the L&D team to still review and validate all that AI generated content for accuracy. But I know when I started using AI for my development, I reduced my development time by 55%. So that was a huge savings for my contract. All right, so if you're wondering how the heck am I going to get started with UDL and AI, you can use this QR code here to scan. And I have a UDL action plan there for you. Starting small is key to sustainable implementation. Follow the steps through here, and you're going to go from assessing your current learning needs to understanding where you might be able to have an impact and an implementation timeline. You'll be able to walk through how you might pilot something and measure success. But remember through all this that AI is just a tool to enhance human teaching. We can't replace the human touch. Like we keep seeing in the chat, people need to check what the person is doing. We need to ensure that that things are correct and that the AI is generating the type of information that will be useful for our colleagues. All right, so some different tips and tools of the trade. When this goes out, you guys will be able to click on these to get further information. And if you would like to reach out to me or to our friends at Murf, I will put my LinkedIn in the chat here so people can reach out to me if they have questions. You can always message me on LinkedIn. Yeah, the QR's not working for you. I'll do it now. While I'm getting that direct link here, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, the floor is open for questions now. You can use the Q&A option or the chat to ask your questions.
This link that I'm about to post is for the UDL AI action plan. When you say, does anyone have a good AI solution for personas? You mean to create the persona? Yeah, I'm sure that I sort of start with my own and then I use large language model. Yeah, Murf's got some really great. So Laura says she used Murf to record a presentation and it sounded natural. One of the things that I love is that you can have the different dialects, which is great. I'm going to pick on our friend for Adelina from Italy. I took Italian for years in college, and then I went to Naples, and it sounded nothing like what I had learned. And so being able to learn different dialects or hear different dialects or see different cultures and dialects at the same time would have been really, really, really helpful. If anybody has questions or just wants to chat, please reach out on LinkedIn, and definitely try your Murf dub. It is so fun. And there are so many options that you can do with that. I can just spend so much time dubbing things that I know that my employees would be able to use more helpful.
Awesome. All right, I'm just going to quickly run a poll for rating the webinar. You guys would also be receiving an email with more information. We will also be sharing the webinar recording by tomorrow. Just keep an eye on the Murf AI LinkedIn page. For now, I would be really grateful if you could rate the webinar. It'll help us to the next
The
one
link
better.
I just put up there is a link to the presentation if you want to be able to follow the links in the presentation or anything like that.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, everybody.
Great,
Just keep an eye out on the Murf AI LinkedIn page, and do follow Juliann for more L&D resources. I'm sure we'll get more stuff with Juliann and Murf soon. Thank you for attending the webinar today.